Couldn't catch me, I'll be moving fast. Call me a shooting star. Let 'em know who you are. Flying up in a bar. Wish on a star. Time to show 'em who's in charge. Call me a shooting star. Shooting stars.
Didn't even get to bronze.
I said I'm moving too far. Get to glass. You're looking at a shooting star. Got more than a couple of people going mad. I swear they're rooting hard. Tell them I'd be big in the game like she went and got them breast implants. I said I'm moving too fast. Didn't even get to glance. I'm ready to eat up track like I'm seated in a restaurant. If you had swag like mine, you know it's best to flaunt. We aren't hating because you aren't. Shining like it's neon. Rock like kings of Leon. Shooting stars across the galaxy. I stand out, so don't be mad at me. Infiltrate, I'm with my strategy. When I turn up, then I just have to leave. Shooting stars across the galaxy. I stand out, so don't be mad at me. Infiltrate, I'm with my strategy. When I turn up, then I just have to leave. Yeah, shooting. Yeah, shooting. Yeah, shooting. Yeah, shooting shots. Shooting stars.
Didn't even get to bronze.
I said I'm moving too far. Get to glass.
Well, ooh, I got some echo. Hold on one sec. Are you guys getting an echo? Huh. I gotta figure something out here. Can you guys let me know if you're getting an echo? Because if you are, I'm gonna have to restart again. I was having a lot of issues with sound, which is why I had to restart. Okay, no echo on YouTube, so I guess I'm just gonna go with it, and I'm gonna have to ignore my own echo. Oh shit, this is weird. Okay, well, I'm gonna do the best I can. I have to not hear anything that I am doing. Oh my God, that's gonna be crazy. Okay. So, I wanted to do a bit of an update on the LNC meeting. It's not going to be terribly great because I'm freaking exhausted. Like, I don't know if you can... I probably look like hell. I've been so freaking busy and gotten no sleep, but I like updating you guys. So here we are. Just don't expect perfection. And I see there's some questions, and let me answer them first. Ben Leader, let me see if I can put this up on the screen. What information can be released about the recent Historical Committee executive session and any subsequent motions that may have arisen out of it? Nothing at this point. There will be a motion. We haven't finalized the wording of the motion, and we continued the executive session via email. But obviously, just like the LNC, any votes will be done in public. So I expect a motion to come out of it at this Wednesday's historical committee meeting. And if you take a look in our last minutes, there was a reference to it, to what's going on. There's an issue with some party property that we're having trouble getting returned back to us, type of thing. But that's all that's going to be said, because the rest is a private matter. But a motion will be coming out of it. And what happened, Sam said, I'm having terrible issues. Hey, Mark. I'm having terrible technical issues. So that's what happened. I had to restart the stream. There was no sound. And then I guess my sound's making up for it by going double. But, and I hope you stick around, Mark, because I think you'll find some of what happened tonight very, very interesting, if I can end up playing the video. Otherwise, we'll just talk about it if I can't play any of the video. So we had a LNC meeting tonight. We now meet monthly electronically, and that makes things run, I think, a lot smoother, because we don't do a lot of email ballots anymore. And what I'm trying to pull up here to share with you guys, in case you don't know, because this will help you follow along. My goal has always been to get members more involved. So I'm pulling up here what's known as a OneNote. And if you're not aware, everything that we're looking at, or motions or anything like that, I make publicly available all on a OneNote, and it's also what the LNC uses. So if I can share my screen here, here we go. This link is always posted in the meeting chat. I also post it in the YouTube chat whenever we start a meeting. And I just wanted to go over this with you guys a little bit, so you could become familiar with resources that are available to you to help you follow along with the LNC meeting, and then we'll get right to the meeting. But as you can see, you got housekeeping, and it gives you the login, and it gives you the link for the OneNote. And, you know, we have the attendance records. But there's an agenda tab, and I upload the agenda. So you can view this ahead of time. You can view it during the meeting. So you're not like, it's difficult to listen to meetings, I think. It's very hard to follow along. And then on the side here, you see we've got old business, new business with previous notice, miscellaneous, and secretary. So let's just go through these tabs quickly, and then we'll start reviewing the meeting. So under old business, there was social media policy proposed by Eric Rodsep, but you can see I put all of the information of what's going to be discussed right on the screen. If you go to new business with previous notice, you'll see here, and this is what I'm probably going to talk the most about. This was the disappointment of the evening. The anti-transparency that's going on with the LNC right now, and I know other LNC members will disagree with my characterization, but that's why you're listening to me, to get my opinion. To get a full-rounded opinion, ask other LNC members, because I'm giving you my opinion. Then we had this passed unanimously, which was great, a voting reform committee, and then there were some policy manual changes and so on. So, oh, one other thing I wanted to show you. If you go down here to the tab that says secretarial, and you see it says live voting template. If you click on that, you can follow along during the meeting, and you can also refer back, and the tabs along here, the votes. So, for instance, the first vote was Radsep on social media policy. The second vote was on delete the secret internal LNC list, which you can see failed. If you are a transparency advocate, I'd like you to take note of all the no votes. Some of these no votes were extremely disappointing to me. Others, I expected. And I don't mind saying the ones that were disappointing to me. I was, because again, they're probably disappointed in me in a lot of things. None of this is personal. We are all business professionals out to look out for the party. And my other fellow LNC members would have disagreed in good faith, but the votes I'm very disappointed in with this would be Mr. Hewitt, Ms. Hogarth, and Mr. Molman. The other no's, maybe a Ms. Bill Yu, but maybe not. The rest of them I expected. And I have to say, I'm extraordinarily pleased that Mr. Longstreth voted yes. And Mr. Nana. Mr. Nana, to me, has been... I've always gotten along very, very well with Dustin, and we've voted a lot together. But I have to tell you, Mr. Nana considers himself a prag compared to some other people on the LNC who consider themselves radicals. I consider myself a radical, obviously. I vote in accordance. Mr. Nana and I walk in lockstep far more than any of the other self-proclaimed radicals on the LNC list. And what this tells me is either I'm fooling myself and I'm not a radical, or perhaps the other people are fooling themselves and they're not a radical, or 3, being a radical makes absolutely no difference to being on the LNC. I don't believe number 3. I believe there are some votes that absolutely should make a difference, and transparency is one of them. Others, you judge. But I've been very disillusioned with that. But let me see if I can pull up the meeting. And let me see what's going on in comments. Yeah, we're going to go, Ryan, we're going to go over the private email list in detail, because that to me was a very important issue this evening. And Court will go over that as well. Hey, Ollie. And thank you so much. So hopefully I'm going to be able to pull up the video and be able to hear what's going on, because you guys aren't getting an echo, but I am. So let me pull up. What's going on here? So I'm trying to pull up, whatchamacallit. Here we go. So this is the meeting. Let me see if I put my headphones on, if I'm going to be able to deal with this echo. So I'm sorry I didn't, cue this up ahead of time. I've been so busy. I'm such a dork. I'm clicking on that screen. 1 second. Let me move ahead.
Next on the draft.
First thing, are you hearing the audio from the video when I hit play? Let me know.
Agenda, which we haven't yet adopted, is opportunity for public comment, 10 minutes. If there's any member of the gallery who wishes to address the LNC, this is a great time in which to do it. Simply use the...
Can someone please let me know if they are in fact hearing the audio? Okay, hold on 1 sec. Perfect. Let's continue.
The raise hand feature on Zoom.
I'm going to try to move ahead to where we start talking
either
about
at the bottom
the
of your
secret
screen
email
or in the
list.
participant window.
16 million were infected, while a nearly miraculous solution underwent.
Social media policy, Mr. Roudsepp, 10 minutes.
Okay, let me just give you a brief update on the social media policy. The next motion is the secret email list. The social media policy was just giving guidelines for our volunteers. Eric Roudsepp worked very, very hard on it. If my memory's correct, it did pass, right? I am like so freaking tired. Let me look at the votes here. It passed 9 to 5 to 3. Okay, perfect. And it, it's just basically volunteer guidelines. And some people wanted to punt it, saying it should wait for the communications director. And I'm like, if we felt that way, we should have told Eric that 3 months ago rather than letting him continue to work on it and then punt it. We have a very bad habit of punting things, going, oh, it should wait for this, it should wait for this. And it's not just us. All governing bodies have that problem. Your state party has it, the LNC has it. But I'm glad it passed because Eric worked hard on it, and it deserved to not get punted. I mean, if people didn't like the product, that's one thing. But otherwise, I was like, it's very discourteous to Eric not to consider this. So let's move past this to the secret email list.
So this has been a living in the loan policy?
Same way it is in the meetings that any,
Here we
but I
go.
think I said what I.
You want to detach?
Ms. Harless, do you wish to speak further to it?
Yes, I would be in some kind of volunteer manual. However,
I'm sorry, I'm trying to find it here.
Seeing none, the question's automatically called. Madam Secretary, if you would read the roll.
Let's
Call the roll, Robin.
let the roll
Sure,
call
one
go,
moment.
and that's the next vote is the secret email list.
I've been informed by Ms. Bilyeu that Ms. Adams will be voting on this. So Ms. Adams,
No.
Mr. Coburn,
No.
Ms. FP,
Previous notice, the first one of which
Here we
is
go.
delete internal LNC email list. Ms. Harless, 10 minutes.
okay. I'm gonna make the motion and then I will speak to it. So my motion is, as you stated, to delete the internal LNC email list.
That is Ms. Harless's motion. Is there a second?
I will second.
Seconded by Mr. Roudsep. Is there objection?
Objection.
Objection.
There is objection from, well, there is objection. So we'll proceed to discussion and debate. Ms. Harless, would you like to speak to your motion?
Yes, I would. Okay, first I'd like to know, and I'm not saying this to say anyone did anything wrong. They did it, I think they thought it would be a good idea, but this list was not created by action of the LNC. It was created by our former executive director he thought it would be for our convenience. We've never had this before because of the temptation to very easily just send things out on a secret list. I believe that our conduct should be governed the same way it is in the meetings, that anything that goes in private needs to be noticed in public that we're having a private discussion and what the justification is, like we do for executive session. The fact is, this LNC secret list has been used not for anything nefarious, not for anything any members would get really upset about, but for things that really aren't secret, for travel plans and what's going on with a hotel at a meeting, with the idea that members don't want to read this. It's trivial. Well, I'd say it's not our position to decide what members want to read. It's members' rights to decide, and they could just as easily skip those things. It's become too big of a temptation. And when I objected, it became a big hoopla, and it's just not worth it. When there are things that need to be private, we should have to go through the trouble of typing out everyone's email address and send it private and give notice of it, because that lets us know the seriousness of it, and it's not quite so convenient.
Okay, so let me give you guys a bit of a history. And the problem with meetings, and I'm sure you guys encounter this in your state party meetings, we're on strict time limits, like there's 10 minutes per item or sometimes 15 minutes per item. And when you speak to your motion, you're trying to anticipate all the objections, but you never can. And you very rarely get to speak twice, so you don't get to rebut a bunch of stuff that was said. And I have a big problem with a lot of things that was said that I never got a chance to rebut. But let me set the stage for you as to what was going on. So Mr. Fishman, not out of any nefarious thing, set up this private email list. There was objection to me calling it a secret list. Let me tell you why I do that. It's not to be inflammatory. Well, maybe a little bit. I learned this from Star Child. The reason I call it a secret list so that we can't fool ourselves that it's anything but that. You know, we like to do these fancy terms that I think sometimes are just to make us feel important. Executive session and all this, like we're a bunch of fucking executives. No, it's secret. I call it the secret list so that we understand it's very anti-transparency, and that if it's used, it should be very narrowly carved. I do that also for myself. I call it a secret list so that I realize whatever I send anything on there, I'm keeping it from the members who elected me. I will always call it a secret list. I call executive session secret session. Again, I learned this from Star Child, but I think it's very helpful. So the secret list was created for things that should be secret. There are things that should be secret, and I'll give you some examples of them, and our policy manual says some. But what it started getting used for was chit-chat. That's not what it's for. If you want to chit-chat with some other LNC members, go do it on Facebook or something. Do not use party property. See, I didn't get to emphasize this. This email list belongs to the party. We have a fiduciary duty to use party property properly. Ooh, that's like she sells seashells by the seashore. Party property properly. And it was used for things like, I can't even remember all of it. Not all of it was even chit chat. Some of it was stuff was substantive, I thought, and should have gone on the list. And here's what's happened. And I can say this publicly. And if she's out here, I would love for her to come interact with me on this, because what I got mad on this secret list. So did John Phillips, God bless him. And I said, what we're talking about here has no business being on the secret list. I do not consent. You keep doing this, I'm just going to forward it to the public list. And boy, did all hell break loose when I said that. You can't do that. I go, watch me. And I did. It was crazy. And the person who got really, really angry at me for forwarding an email that should have been public was Susan Hogarth, a fellow radical. This is when I started really just having some issues going, what's going on here? And she got really angry at me for forwarding it to the public list. But I put the whole LNC on notice. You put things on this private list that belong public, I'm going to forward it. You don't like it, censor me. Censor me. I don't consent. My duty's not to you, it's to the members. And then everyone kind of stopped. And then I felt like so then I said, okay, here's my notice. Next meeting, I'm moving to delete this list. This is a pain in the butt. And then after I did that, of course, everyone stopped using it. And I kind of started to feel like a jerk for having this motion. But I'm going to give props to Joe Bishop Henchman here. I posted, I said, listen, I could see everyone now's kind of learned their lesson. They're not using this list improperly. I'd be willing to withdraw my motion if we create rules for using the list. And props to our chair. He said to me, I'm probably showing my hand right now, but I actually agree with your motion. I was like, well, if the chair agrees, then I'm not withdrawing my motion. Now, there are legitimate uses for the list. Let me give you some examples. I'm the one who uses it the most, but for legitimate things. And let me give you one. It comes up in the meeting. When we have committee applications, I bundle all the applications together in a nicely indexed little notebook for LNC members, but there's private information on these applications, like people's home addresses, phone number, email. So I send the applications privately, but I post a notice on the public list that I did this, and I put the index of the names on the public list. So I put what can be public on the public list. I send what has to be private on the private list. And I think I'm going to save the rest of my points. What I want to do now is take the opportunity to debate with my fellow LNC members. And if they're here, I can bring them on. But they're arguments that I didn't get to rebut live. And I know I get tedious saying this over and over and over, but I feel like I have to because it makes me feel bad being critical of people I really like. None of this is supposed to be personal criticisms. It's merely a professional disagreement. You might disagree with me and agree with someone else. But I believe it's important for you guys to see this and make your decisions. You might think I'm making a big deal out of nothing. Okay, let's continue.
Thank you, Ms. Harless. I have Mr. Moolman, Mr. Phillips, Mr. Wendt. So Mr. Moolman.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I mean, I certainly understand where Ms. Harlos is on this, that having an easy mechanism to communicate could lead to some, I guess it would be ex parte communication that should not be occurring. I don't believe, I mean, there have certainly been on the list a couple of times where it got close and people specifically called it out and said, whoa, 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 we need to be talking about this over on the other list. I personally am really funny maybe about my travel plans. I don't broadcast them.
Okay, I want to stop for a second here. He said it got called out, and he made it sound like when it got called out, everyone agreed. No, when it got called out, my ass got ridden over it, which is what provoked me to start this motion. If I simply called it out and everyone said, oh, no, you're right, we shouldn't do that, do you think I'd be making this big public stink over it? No. But because people got mad at me for forwarding the things to the public list, and I said, I'm going to anyway. So I just decided we needed to settle this. And Ken is right, but he made it sound like people only objected when it veered into things that, like, I objected the whole time. In fact, I want to see something here. Let me stop my screen share. I want to see if I can give an example. I don't know if I can stop my screen share, and I don't want to put up on the screen some private stuff. That would be pretty shitty. Let me see if I can pull up my email and see if I can give you an example of a conversation that went on that isn't private. It isn't private, so you put it on a secret list, I don't care. It isn't private, and I'm going to talk about it. If I can find it quickly. I get hundreds of emails a day sometimes, so. Oop, that's the wrong email. See, and I've got like 10 email addresses. That was my personal email. I need to go over to my LNC email. So let's go to sent and internal. Okay, let me see if I can find a quick example. If not, and let me tell you some things on here that were legitimately secret. Opposition research. It's political strategy. But here's an email thread that's about coalition building with like-minded organizations. Why is this on the secret list? And here's what I said. I think this has gone way beyond what should be on the secret list. This conversation clearly needs to be public. And then, look, this is on the secret list. There's nothing nefarious about this, but why is this on the secret list? An email. I've heard 2 different times for the meeting to start. The secretary's one note says 11 a.m. I want to verify if 11 a.m. is correct. Why is this on the secret list? If he was confused by the start time, maybe other people were. You know, it's this kind of stuff. So it's nothing nefarious, but just it was annoying. I'm going to see if I can find another one here. Like the proposed budget that had staff salaries, that should be secret. Here's the one that started everything, I think. Okay, tell me why this should be on the secret list. Tell me as a member you wouldn't be interested in this. Opening email. Possibly this has been covered before, but during this long online meeting, there will be times when regional reps want to swap out, but likely remain logged in. How do we designate that our alternate will be speaking for us? Why is this on the secret list? Don't you think the members want to know the procedure? I don't get this. And here, this is what I said. I know others have a different view, but I object to this private list being used for anything other than items that would be discussed in executive session. It is terrible precedent. I only just now saw that this was on the private list. In the future, I will make any such responses of mine on the public list, as I cannot support this list being used in this manner. And I continued, I'm not suggesting anyone did anything purposely secretly. I'm saying it's terrible precedent, and I will not respond in secret. And then I got pushback. Why did I get pushback? And I said, your objection is noted. I said, I'll be giving, I'll be responding in public. So that's the sort of thing. Nothing, nefarious. We weren't plotting to screw over members. But you see the terrible precedent that is being set. So now let me continue. And court, our executive director set up this list. Not nefariously. He thought, because there is time when we do have to communicate secretly, and we were having to type everyone's email address in, he goes, let me just make a distribution list. But the distribution list just makes it too easy to abuse. If people don't want to type in the email addresses, they can make their own distribution list on Gmail. You can do that. But that's not party property. So let's continue now, if I can. Yes, with the meeting. So Ken's going to give some more
I don't
points.
take pictures. I don't post pictures while I'm at places. When I ran for office statewide in 2011, I ended up with weirdo Facebook stalkers, and I've been kind of sensitive to that ever since. People, prying into my kids and my wife's stuff. And, I don't want my travel plans to be known. And so like I said, I understand why. I understand the history. I do believe Ms. Harless is correct that the history of the creation of the list was meant to be convenience for internal, hey, who wants to go grab dinner type things that we do at LNC meetings, non-business things that are reasonably not transparency issues.
Okay, I'm going to disagree, though, with Ken there, and I couldn't disagree because I didn't get another turn. The list was not created for things like, hey, do you want to grab dinner? Our executive director created this list for legitimate executive session type things. It was not for LNC chit-chat. You want to chit-chat with fellow LNC members, start a Facebook Messenger group. Email them personally. I can fully understand if you don't want to say what time you're landing in wherever our meeting is because of stalkers. I've had a stalker. Then don't tell everyone. And this question came up because me as secretary, I have to keep track of when we're going to lose quorum. So I ask everybody their departure time. They could just email me that because it's not business. It's just so that I can inform the chair when we're going to lose quorum. I don't expect anyone to disclose public travel plans if they don't want to. Nobody's ever asked for that. I made the mistake in my opening argument I think I brought up this rabbit trail. When I said travel plans, I did not mean what he's talking about. I meant like that email I just read to you guys. Does the meeting start at 11 or 10? I need to plan when to be there. That's what I meant by travel plans. I did not mean people should be saying, when they're leaving their house. I get it. Thieves scope out Facebook to see when houses might be empty. None of that ever happened on the list. This is a complete red herring. So let's continue. And I think he's just misremembering. Ken's not purposely misrepresenting anything.
But whether we curate this list or not, or keep this list or not, it effectively has no difference. Like, I can start up a Facebook chat or an email thread or whatever with everybody and say, hey, who wants to go grab dinner? Or, hey, my flight gets in at whatever time. Who wants to go grab a drink. I can do all those things either way. I think the important part is the vigilance in ensuring that we're never doing the business of this party in a non-transparent way. And I do believe that I've not seen anything that would suggest that we're doing that.
I just read you a few things. Nothing nefarious, but don't you think coalition building should have been on the public list? Don't you think discussing how regional representatives are to leave the table and allow their alternates to vote for them, that shouldn't be on a private list? Now, it wasn't, again, anything earth-shattering. But you know what they say? Rights are eroded by the death of 1,000 cuts. I don't allow the first cut. None of us did "what time are you having for dinner?" We've always used text and Facebook Messenger for that. You want to know why? Because it's a reality. Not everyone on the LNC likes each other. I don't mean to shatter your illusions. So we don't all chit-chat together about when we're going to get together when we don't have to be in the same room together and say kumbaya. We don't. Not everyone is BFF. I share where I'm going to be and doing dinner with my friends on the LNC, and I do that privately on Facebook. I don't use the LNC list for that, and we shouldn't be. The LNC, our business lives are not our private lives. Continuing.
Not on the internal list, not on any Facebook chat, not on any privately set up email list chain, whatever. We do the business transparently, and certainly there are members that talk about things because we're individuals and we discuss thoughts on things. But when it comes to doing the business of this party, it is done transparently. And so the only thing I would ask is that if we are going to delete this list,
that wasn't private. It's just that I stopped the video playing. Shit. Hold on. I gotta find the play button. Sorry.
then if somebody wants to scour through it and look for something they think should have been public that wasn't.
Hey guys, it looks like my internet connection had a burp and it dropped you. I hope you all come back. I'm gonna give it a few minutes for you guys to figure out that I had to restart the stream. Comcast, you know. So let's continue now with this, excuse me, the secret email list thing.
Thank you, Mr. Mullen. I have Mr. Phillips and then Mr. Wendt. Mr. Phillips?
I think that I made it clear from the minute that this list, that list was created, that I was opposed to that list existing. And so I will reiterate that. While Mr. Mullen does raise very valid points about how we do have other avenues for secret communications, if we were to want to engage in them, that doesn't mean that we should make it easier, in my opinion. And I, sadly have to disagree with him about, I think currently we're doing a much better job of it, but I have to disagree with him about the business of this party having always been, done transparently, even in my tenure. So I think that given that we, several of us that served in the previous term are well aware of things that happened outside normal communications channels, that it is in our best interest to go over, above, and beyond to not encourage any appearance of that whatsoever. And so I 100% support the removal of this list, and that it should not be easy for us to engage in communications that are not in the public eye. Thank you.
He's absolutely right. Another point I want to add here, some other people made this point. Actually, I think it was members in chat. We need to set example for what we want to see from the government. If we're trying to find ways to not be transparent and we're libertarians, what do you think statists are going to do? To me, this should be a no-brainer. And I kind of follow the principle of avoid even the appearance of impropriety. You know me and my religious analogies. Orthodox Jews have something called putting a fence around the Torah. You know how they have 613 laws? Those aren't all in the Bible. They're laws that are keeping them from breaking the laws. Like, if you know the Garden of Eden story, when, Eve was, I forgot who she was relating it to. Well, there wasn't that many people. It was just Adam and the snake, right? But, she had added an additional rule, which we can argue about whether that was right or not, where God just told her don't eat of the tree, but she said we're not even to touch it. That might be a good rule. If you stay far away from it, that you don't touch it, you're not going to be tempted to eat it. So in the analogy of the Orthodox Jewish people, put a fence around transparency. We should never be trying to see how close can we get to the line without going over it. Right? Stay far away from that. Continuing.
Thank you, Mr. Phillips. Mr. Wendt and then Ms. Adams. Mr. Wendt.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I want to point out some actual facts. I'm looking at the Google group, which is what this private list is. It is titled LNC Internal, and it is a Google group, and there are 59 threads of it, 29 members, which if you do some math, that includes our staff, not just the LNC members. So there are items that were communicated from staff to the LNC on this list. Also,
okay, but I want to bring up something here. He's right. Staff is on it too. Can't you see there's a problem here? Staff isn't automatically included in executive session. Sometimes we're talking about staff. So what good even was this list for truly secret things? Does everyone know who's reading it? Normally we don't mind our executive director seeing everything, but we have levels of staff. Right? That didn't even occur to me at the meeting.
So in the past, since almost 3 weeks, the last 5 communications in the list were from the Secretary Carrie Ann Harlos concerning our committee applications. So those are specific applications that are not necessarily public information because they are private information. They are people who have entrusted this committee to select them to be on our subcommittees. So since this list's creation, there have been 58 email chains. That's it, 58. Now, when we're talking about deleting a list, we're talking about deleting heuristics. Heuristics is basically the concept of making a shortcut to make something a little bit easier. We're talking about two members of this committee have actually expressed that they want to make it harder on other committee members to communicate. That is what it is. We want to spend 10, 15 minutes to type out everybody's email address, or maybe it's a copy and paste, whatever. But the point is that, as Mr. Molman pointed out, when that transparency becomes questionable, it has been called every time. Now, if we want to delete this list, there is an expectation that if we delete the list, we're deleting data. We are removing it from the potential for members to review it at a later time. So I think deletion is just the wrong perspective. It may be private information, and that is something that I believe that this committee and this party should be very concerned with, is the protection of private information. And that's what we use it for. Thank you.
Okay. And he gave examples of where I legitimately used it for things, and I gave public notice of it. I really don't see how any of that defeated my point. The fact that there was only 59, to me, 59 seems like a lot. I guess that all depends upon your perspective, I guess. But to me, that's way too many. I am looking for one other thing here. So where he said the last 5 were from me, let me let you know. I did one today at 6 a.m. entitled Third and Last Package of Candidate Support Committee Applications. I did one at 4 a.m. today saying Awards and Audit Committee Application Packages. I did one on January 2nd saying updated Convention Oversight Committee Applications. One on December 28th, latest batches of committee applications. December 19th, audit, awards, and candidate committee applications. Those are all people's personal information. It made it sound like I was complaining about a list that I used a lot and perhaps inappropriately. And no, I'm not saying that was his intention to give that impression, but that's kind of what happened. And also, I don't agree that this email list is heuristics. Maybe I just don't understand what heuristics are, but I'm familiar with that term in my legal profession where we use heuristics in order to pick the best juries for trials. So, yeah, heuristics are mental shortcuts that ease the cognitive load of making a decision. How is an email list heuristics? I think maybe you meant statistics. I don't know. But let's continue.
Thank you, Mr. Wendt. Time on this item has
And you guys
expired.
aren't
I'll note
chatting.
there's
If you don't keep me
6
company, I
people
get
still in the
lonely.
queue if anybody wants to move to extend time.
I would move to extend time, Mr. Chair, and I had gotten line for a second to rebut.
Seconded.
Okay.
10 minutes.
Ms. Harless moves to extend time by 10 minutes, seconded by Mr. Phillips. Is there objection? Seeing no objection, time is extended by 10 minutes. I have Ms. Adams and then Ms. Hogarth next. Ms. Adams?
Yes, so I very much agree with what Mr. Wendt said. I agree with some of what Ken said. I get what John's saying. At the same time, there were times that internal list was used last cycle that was used absolutely appropriately and needed to be used. We're talking about also shifting into a time where there's been a whole lot of push from LNC members to shift meetings to virtual spaces versus in-person spaces. And a lot of these things that we would normally talk about over drinks or dinner, checking on people's families. Sometimes it's personal confidential information like that. Checking on other LNC members who have been ill. Sometimes it's personal conversations.
I want to stop for 1 second there. Erin is usually my spirit animal, but I just don't agree with her here. We haven't been using that list for checking on people's pets and family. And if you want to check on people's pets and family, don't use party property to do it. Use Facebook Messenger, use text, pick up the phone. If you don't want it in public and it's not executive session, don't use party property that's paid for by party members who have every right to expect us to conduct ourselves in public.
That. We also receive communications via the office, via staff, sometimes from members who don't want that information shared, and that's why it's being distributed.
Okay, that information is not shared on this internal list. It's shared to our LP email addresses. Some of you might not understand, all these lists are a distribution list that distributes out to email addresses. When members write, it comes through that form that's on the LNC page on lp.org, and it gets privately distributed to each of us. It doesn't go to any list. So I think perhaps Erin is just confused here. I don't think I'm looking back on this term, and there has not once been an example of staff sending us a email from members that they wanted to keep private on the internal list. This is all the examples that have been given so far are not the way it's been used.
To us that way. I'm 100% in support of establishing clear guidelines and rules for this list and expecting that LNC members are following them and maybe even setting some kind of, you have to wear a I violated the rules hat to the next meeting if you violate. I'm cool with that too. But we still need a way to have internal confidential communication.
There is a way. Type in everybody's email address. Create your own distribution list. Call for an executive session meeting. Email should never be used for anything terribly serious to begin with. We meet monthly. The whole idea was to cut down on email. So what I hear, and again, I'm not trying to throw any of my fellow LNC members under the bus. What I'm hearing here is a bunch of examples that are non-issues. We do have ways to communicate privately. We each have an LP email address. We can type it. We don't need a secret list that makes it so easy. And you want to know what else it makes it easy to do? To mistype. So, you know, when we're typing out something to the LNC list, you just type in LNC in your email and Gmail auto-populates it. You know how easy it is to accidentally type in the wrong thing when it's a distribution list and send something to the internal list that should be on the public list? You notice on one of the emails I read to you guys where I said, I just noticed this is on the private list. Because it's not immediately apparent. You have to look up in the email header. One says LNC, I forgot what our regular LNC list says. Let me start typing and see what that says. It says LNC-business. And the internal one says LNC-internal. It's not immediately obvious when you're scanning emails.
That involve staff, contracts, things like that should absolutely not be 100% public. I'm fine with us even creating an audit process so that the body and the members can audit communications or have a process to do it. But I think talking about throwing the baby out with the bathwater is just the wrong move.
Okay. At a meeting when we discuss staff salaries, what do? We move to go into executive session for the purpose of discussing staff salaries. So, why isn't it handled the same way on email? Where a public notice is put to the members that we're having a secret discussion and the subject of the secret discussion. That's what our policy manual says. Actually, forget the policy manual. The delegates at last convention put in our bylaws the rules for executive session. So if we're not doing that, we might not be violating the letter of the bylaws, but we're violating the spirit of the bylaws.
Thank you, Ms. Adams. Ms. Hogarth and then Mr. Coburn. Ms. Hogarth?
Yeah, Aaron's points were a great place for me to take off, because I'm glad she pointed out I don't know if irony is the right word, but the irony of many of the same people saying that we needed to meet in person because, especially for the budget meeting, because so much of the business happens at the bars and hanging out, you know, eating dinner together. Many of those people are now saying we can't have a confidential email list. So I
for one, have never said that in-person meetings are good to conduct business at the bars or whatever. We shouldn't be conducting business outside of the view of the members, be they at a bar, be that on the secret email list. So again, I don't know, maybe somebody else said that. I certainly did not. Now, LNC members do powwow with each other over the bar or whatever like that. But my argument always about in-person meetings is that it's tougher to be jerks to somebody when you got to look at them face to face, and it builds relationships that don't get built online. But of course, this whole online versus in-person is a sore topic between Susan and I.
don't really understand the difference there. But actually, I think there's a larger issue and I'd like to make an amendment. I think actually we need one more list. So we do need a confidential list. A lot of the stuff that happens on that doesn't need to be confidential, but that's because a lot of people have started using that, or had started using that list until there was objection, for not necessarily confidential, but unimportant, non-necessary to record business stuff, like, you know, congratulations, Joss, on having a baby.
There's was no emails like that on the secret list. And as I said in my initial argument, if it's worth using the party property to do, it's worth being public. We don't get to guard members from what we might consider to be unimportant. They might consider it to be important. And, you know, it's like the state. I don't want someone deciding for me what I think, you know, what's important enough for me to read. I can make that decision for myself, thank you very much. And you guys can make that decision for yourself.
Or here's some background material, or, you know, stuff not directly related to a motion, but not necessarily confidential. So I think we should create another list and have one confidential list, which is necessary, I think, one business list where business happens, and one list that's more discussion oriented and chat that's entirely public, but that is something that members with a lot of time and interest can dig into. But members who are just interested in the business of the party can go to the primary business list and find that without a lot of ancillary chit chat.
Okay. So now 3 lists. So members who want to keep track of everything now have to go, is it on this list or is it on this list? This is just overly complicated things. And then again, it's us making the decision. This belongs on the business list. This belongs on the casual list. Who says who? A member might disagree. And these conversations often morph into each other. Often something that might start out a little casual turns into a business discussion. And business discussions, sometimes when things get a little heated, somebody will throw in something lighthearted and it moves to casual. So now we want to proliferate lists. Members already tell us that it's not immediately obvious to them how to follow the LNC. Now we got to tell them they got to subscribe to 2 different lists and try to figure out which one's going to have the subject matter. This makes it sound like all we do is chit-chat all day long, and if a member went to our regular list, they would be swamped with 100 emails a day asking about Joshua's baby. That is not the case. Less than 1% of our emails can be considered personal chit-chat. Yeah, exactly, Ray. You get a list. You get a list. We all get a list. Why make things more complicated? Again, all these examples that are getting thrown out simply don't happen. Here's my favorite expression. You guys, it's one of my favorites, and people kept quoting me with this after the online convention when somebody was asking me a question that depended upon all these future variables that might not happen. And I said, I'm not going to mine the subjunctive. That's exactly what's going on here. All this mining of the subjunctive that isn't happening. You know, is it possible? Yeah, it's also possible, to quote Rain's World, that monkeys might fly out of my ass, but it's probably not going to happen.
So I don't know if it's appropriate to offer an amendment, but I would offer an amendment to make a second public list for non-business items.
Ms. Hogarth moves to amend by this is adding, not substituting, right? I'm reading, if I'm understanding you right.
Well, maybe it would
It-
substitute because I don't want the.
Let me not
first-
lead you. Tell me what you want
What?
to do,
Yeah,
because
no,
right
no,
now
no.
it's delete the
Okay,
internal
no.
list. Yeah.
No, actually, yeah, so, no, because it was, yeah, I guess it would be substitution to keep the internal list as a confidential list and add another list that's public.
Point of order,
for-
Mr.
All right.
Chair.
I'm going to stop the clock for a moment. And Ms. Harlos, I think your mind's going where mine's going, but I'm going to let you say it out loud. Ms. Harlos, what's your point of order?
This goes way beyond the scope of the meeting and the scope of the notice where we were talking about deleting a list. Talking about the creation of a whole other system is way beyond the scope of notice. Even as a substitution, it's not really, yeah, that I'm probably not saying it artfully, but I think that would need to be done at another meeting where people had time
Mr. Chair?
to think and prepare.
Ms. Hogarth?
Oh, no, I just wondered what your ruling is. I got the gist.
Well, I'm not sure on that one. I was actually going in a different direction where you really can't offer an amendment to make the thing the opposite of what
Yes,
it
I
was
understand
originally offered, and I'm wondering whether that's what you're trying to do.
Actually, you can, Mr.
Chair, she
Chair.
offered a substitution, not an amendment.
Ms.
Okay.
Adams is correct. All right, so that's on
I
mine.
might-
But back to Ms.
I
I'm sorry, Ms. Hogarth.
I might be able to just simplify things. That's where my mind is going. I take the secretary's issue. That makes sense. You know, that is dumping a lot. I think we should just, I'll just retract all that and ask people to vote it down, and then we can have a discussion about structuring of information and communication, because we are moving into a world where much more is happening virtually. And I'm not talking about the pandemic, I'm talking about us moving into the future. And we need to investigate ways and develop ways of having these communications, and just trying to make it conform to the old city council and open meetings laws and stuff model is just not very forward looking. So I would urge vote it down and then work out some other solution.
Thank you, Ms. Hogarth. I have Mr.
Okay, I'm going to stop. Whew. First of all, for those of you curious, parliamentary wise, you can actually amend a motion to make it the opposite of its original intent. You can have a motion that says, what you can't do is amend a motion to make it the same as if you did nothing. But that's getting into the Roberts weeds. But I think this is a good example. People have asked me, and it's a fair question, why I had been getting upset with the radicals. To me, some of the foundation issues that radicals should always be voting on is transparency. This is why I'm convinced that the LNC is where radicals go to die. I just can't believe those arguments were made that way. And forget the whole libertarians. And to say that the city council, sunshine, open meeting things are like a dinosaur we shouldn't be conforming to. The more we go online, the more we should be concerned about being transparent. I'm shooketh. Continuing. I really am. I'm a little bit speechless hearing it for the second time.
Coburn and Mr. Lucchini, and I've added 2 minutes to the clock while you all watched me go through Robert's rules. Mr. Coburn.
Thank you. I think there are legitimate uses of the internal list, and I think that that's evident by our uses of the internal list recently. I see this as largely a symbolic motion. I think alluding to this as a secret list is a bit hyperbolic, and it implies distrust within or to this committee. And it's a little bit disappointing, but I would ask members that are worried about a so-called secret list to reassess, hopefully, their distrust within this committee, and to make decisions that are based on rational need, not just based on symbolism. So,
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
This list.
Ms. Harless, what's your point of order?
Decorum, reading into motives that are not there and ascribing really bad intent to my motion. It's inappropriate.
I don't think anything more needs to be said beyond that, I guess. All right, Mr. Coburn, if you can continue.
Okay. Simply put, I don't know if there's a way to say this without offending the secretary's feelings. However,
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
All right. Talk about the, wisdom of the proposal, or the, individual motives don't really come into it, and address the comments to the chair. Blame me for stuff. So.
Okay, I want to address that. That was not right. But there is an overarching point. To say something is symbolic, therefore it's not important. My motion wasn't sheerly symbolic. We had a problem. But even if it were, I don't think that's a problem. I think we need to be very symbolic of what we expect from our governing authorities. And none of this was personal distrust of my fellow LNC members. But it is, in general, a philosophy of always distrust your rulers. What do I tell people? I don't personally distrust any of my fellow LNC members. But I also don't tell the members to simply trust us. That is trouble. Trust but verify. What do I tell members all the time? I go, I'm on the LNC. I see how the sausage is made, and sometimes I don't want to eat the sausage. Watch us like a hawk. To have an idea that we should just simply be trusted is a dangerous mindset that far too often our political rulers have. We should not model that. And we should not be offended by the idea that people don't simply want to take our word for it. I don't want anyone to simply take my word for it. The temptation when you're in an elected position, even if it's of such little quote-unquote power as the LNC, it's human nature to let power run away with you. I want our constituents to have a healthy skepticism and not go, just trust us. Don't ever do that. Watch us like a hawk. Watch your city council like a hawk. We're all humans. And authority and power corrupts. We should know that as libertarians above everyone else. We're not made of better material than all the rest of the people out there that aren't libertarians. We suffer the same temptations and weaknesses.
I hope that this committee can agree to keep a list that we have a rational purpose for. And I'll end my comments there.
Thank you, Mr. Coburn. I have Mr. Lucchini and then Mr. Nicola. Mr. Lucchini?
So I share some of the concerns about information specific to travel plans and non-business related items that I may have put on that list.
I want to stop it here just 1 second and we'll continue. I know I'm belaboring a lot of this. To me, though, this is important, and you guys might not think, because it betrays a certain fundamental disconnect in philosophy between several of us. I will always fight for transparency. So I just wanted to get that out there, why I'm belaboring this so much. It might seem trivial to some, but to me, it's emblematic of a fundamental difference in some of our philosophies. My fundamental philosophy is transparency and bottom up. Limit the power of the LNC, make it fully accountable, and don't let the tail wag the dog.
I haven't reviewed it. If the intent here is to delete this list and at the same time make it public, or suspend the use of this list and then make the contents public.
Okay, this goes off on a rabbit trail. No one said anything about that, so I want to skip past this part. My motion, all it said was delete.
Obviously, political parties are different. We need to have strategy. We need to have some things kept private. However, my concern is that while I see the utility in the list and have seen the utility in the list and some of the things of discussion that need to be kept confidential, I think we need to make it very clear that there's a fine line between business and banal talk, because what our plans are for traveling, those kinds of things shouldn't even, quite frankly, be on the business email list. It should be in some other form, because whenever we put on there, it needs to be either business or very confidential. And I would be in favor of amending this list somehow to include those things. Or quite frankly, in the Libertarian Party of Florida, if we have issues, we typically meet up for meetings and go into executive session. That's usually where we tackle those issues, or in committees that already are tackling those issues, like, for instance, the EPCC or other committees that already handle sensitive information. So I'm not crazy about this list. I worry not necessarily about this committee, but I look at the future and who else might use this and might slowly move across that line.
Amen. This isn't about us. Let's use the example of government. We might be angels. We might be saints. We might be the purest human beings that ever walked the earth. Do you know that the next LNC is going to be that? Didn't we learn that lesson? All the people who were supporters of Obama were like, yeah, with the executive orders. They didn't like it so much when Trump did it, right? This isn't about us. The future LNCs might not be as big of angels as we think we are.
Of trivial to business to things that should be discussed in public being discussed on the list. And that line can be crossed very quickly without realizing it. So, well, I understand the need for the list, and I understand that in a perfect world, we could define that line. I'm not crazy about it as it stands. I'd rather do things differently. I'm up to amendments, but right now I'm not crazy about having the list for that reason. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nikela. Was that you said amendment a couple times. Were you offering an amendment or just making this statement?
I'm making a statement. I don't have a particular amendment in mind, but if it's something somebody comes up with, I'd be interested to hear.
All right. Time has expired on this item. Is there objection to Mr. Radcliffe's the only one who hasn't spoken yet, who hadn't spoken at all? We have some second rounds, but.
And I put my hand down.
Oh, you put your hand down. All right. So time has expired on this item, and unless there's a motion to extend time, we will proceed to a vote.
Okay, before we listen to the vote, I must have skipped over, when I tried to cut out some of the fluff, a comment that was said. If we delete this, then how will our secretary send these committee applications and stuff like this? This list is new. I'm on my second term as secretary. Somehow I managed to figure it out last time. Somehow, before this list was created, we all managed to figure it out. This list is fairly new. So this whole, but dear me, how will we ever have a private discussion if we delete this list? How did we do it for the past? I'm on my 6th year. Well, 5th year, but when this term ends, I will have been on the LNC for 6 years. God help me. And for the first 4.5 of those years, we did not have a secret list, and we seem to have survived just fine. But I want you guys to hear the vote, and then we're going to move on.
Point of information.
Mr. Went, what's your point of information?
So on delete the list, does that mean the emails that are contained in the
fluff
in that form, will they also be deleted?
Mr. Smith?
Okay, no, I want to go back to the vote here.
Mr. Hagan?
No.
No.
Is that
Yes, that is a bit more complete answer. Yes.
Okay. Mr. Went, does that answer your question?
Yes, it does.
All right. Any further anything on this item before we proceed to a vote? Seeing none, the secretary will call the roll.
Ms. Bilyeu?
No.
Mr.
Just so you guys know, the motion is to delete the list. So a no vote means they want to keep it. A yes means to delete.
Coburn?
No.
Ms. Epke?
No.
Mr. Hagan?
No.
I will vote yes. Mr. Hewitt?
That's a no.
Ms. Hogarth?
No.
Mr. Longstreth?
Yes.
Mr. Mullman?
No.
Mr. Nana?
Yes.
Mr. Nikela?
I vote aye.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. Routsep?
Pass.
Ms. Sarwark?
No.
Mr. Smith? Mr. Smith? I will come back to you. Mr.
Sorry,
Wen?
yeah. Can I
Oh,
pass for a minute? I'm changing the diaper.
okay, one moment.
Thanks.
Mr. Wen?
Yes.
And Mr. Routsep?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Sorry. Can you tell me? Yes. Hello?
Apologize. I voted incorrectly. I vote
Okay.
no to delete list.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, it's 7 yes, 9 no.
I will vote yes.
8 to 9 to 0.
By a vote of 8 to 9, it does not pass.
Okay, disappointing, but close. But it's kind of where I draw the line in the sand in some things. With people who claim ideological identity with me. If you're a radical and you don't want to delete a secret list, I don't get it. Whatever. I need to get over it. Very disappointing. And if the Radical Caucus does not call its members that are on the LNC to account for these votes and ask them why they did an anti-transparency vote, shame on them. Because let me tell you, when the Radical Caucus disagreed with me, and that's fine, when I voted to remove Arvin Vohra, they certainly called me to account, and I stood my guns, but they did ask me. I expect accountability. If radicals don't stand for transparency, what's the point? Okay. As I said, Dustin Nana is a better radical than most radicals. Let's move on to the next motion. Because this one's a good one. That's why I want you to hear it. We're not going to listen to the whole debate. I just want you to hear the motion.
Next item on the agenda is to establish a voting reform committee. 10 minutes, Ms. Harlos.
Okay, one moment, please. Because I'm doing a lot of jobs at once. Here is, I'll make the motion, and if I have a second, I will speak to it. A motion that a voting reform committee be created with the following characteristics. This committee would be tasked to track and document voting reform efforts throughout the nation, such as RCV and approval voting, inform state affiliates of voting reform activities and organizations in their state, and act as the liaison between voting reform organizations and the National Libertarian Party. This committee shall comprise 5 members, of which at least one shall be an LNC member. The members shall be chosen by the LNC after soliciting applications. This committee shall be ad hoc as a trial phase, with its usefulness and effectiveness to be evaluated by the 2022 through 2024 LNC.
Okay, if you didn't get what that was all about, because it's kind of a lot of gobbledygook that has to be in there for Roberts, is we have a ballot access. Well, I'll actually hear what it's about when I speak to it. Sorry, let me just continue it.
Thank you, Ms. Harless. Ms. Harless moves the adoption of this item to establish this committee. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Nana. Is there objection?
I will object to go into discussion.
Okay, there is objection, so we'll proceed to discussion and debate. Ms. Harless, did you want to speak further?
Yes.
Okay, Ms. Harless.
1 second here. I believe very firmly that the LNC needs to leverage things for which there's economy of scale and our national presence, and that we will never have widespread success of our libertarian candidates until 2 things happen: ballot access reform and voting reform. And we do pay a lot of attention and a lot of activity to ballot access. So I would like us to start really taking the lead on the second prong. And I've become involved with RCV Colorado to really see how powerful these efforts can be and what the national party could do if it got behind it. And this is ultimately to lay the groundwork so that we elect libertarian candidates. I believe this is absolutely necessary to do so.
Okay, that explained it. And I'll answer Nima. There's a secret email list for the LNC, and it's been used for things that shouldn't be secret. So I moved to delete the list, and my motion was defeated. When this broadcast ends, I will be sticking it on YouTube so you can go back and listen. Plus, the whole LNC meeting is on the National Libertarian Party's YouTube page. You can always go back and watch it. I'm happy to say that this motion, which did get amended in 2 ways by Mr. Bishop Henchman that were great. First, he also wanted to add, because I said such as RCV and approval voting, and he added to add and proportional representation, and amended where I said inform the affiliates. I think he said something like coordinate with the affiliates. Both changes that were wonderful. This passed unanimously. So, amen. There was if it didn't, I don't know. I would have lost hope, I think. So that was 17-0. The next motion, which I'm not going to play, I'm just going to explain to you. Well, actually, I think I'm going to read it. And it passed. I did vote for it, though I had some misgivings. Where is the motion? Oh my goodness. Well, I'm not going to make you guys wait. Oh, is it up here? I can put it up on the screen, I think. Yeah, let me, new business. Okay, this is Ms. Epke's motion that no person appointed by the LNC as a voting member to serve on 3 or more standing, special, or bylaws created committees shall be eligible to be appointed by the LNC to serve as a voting member on any additional standing or special committee. For purposes of determining eligibility, neither the LNC Executive Committee nor any chair's advisory committee shall count. So basically, it limits the number of committees that an LNC member can serve on. On one hand, I find this to be a little bit of babysitting. That's the negative. I did vote for this, by the way, but I want to give you the struggle I had. But I find when we get new LNC members, they often don't get opportunities to serve on committees, and the committees keep getting filled by the same people over and over, and we don't build our bench. And also, now that I'm in my second term as secretary, I'm very intimately familiar with the voting patterns of everybody because I have to keep the records. And something I've noticed each term, people only vote for their friends. It's human nature. But I encourage everyone at the end of an LNC term to look at the voting records for committees of your representatives. If there are any people that any member never voted for a committee, that should give you pause. Because presumably, the delegates that elected us aren't stupid. And they elected qualified people. And it would be very unusual for someone that was elected by your fellow delegates, whether you like them or not, to be utterly unqualified for any committee throughout your 2-year term. I think when you see that pattern, you're seeing cliques and not a meritocracy and not the best interest of the party. I think so far this term, I have already voted for everyone. The people I like a lot and the people maybe I don't like so much. Because personalities aside, everyone on the LNC is highly qualified. So that's an exercise I would really encourage you to do. And that's why I voted for this motion, because it's a clique breaker, a clique buster. I've seen cliques cause way too much damage in the party, not so much on the national level, but in Colorado, cliques right now are destroying the state party. Colorado right now is a hot mess. We're a clown car. We're getting nothing done because of mean girl cliques. And it's not just girls, but you know what I mean. It's exactly what it is. Horribly destructive. So I supported it for that purpose. Because it's funny that, and also because I believe in term limits as well. And I know some people consider that nannying. I don't consider it nannying because no one has a right to rule. And you really don't have a right to vote for the ruler of your choice indefinitely. I'm not talking about necessarily for LNC, I'm talking about for public office. I don't think public office is legitimate to begin with, so I do not care if you get butthurt because I'm limiting the number of times you can vote for the same illegitimate ruler. That's my opinion on term limits. But I also believe in term limits on the LNC, not because we are rulers per se, but because we're not going to be around forever, and for the good of the party, we have to build the bench. In general, I think the most anyone should serve in any one position continuously is 3 terms. Go run for something else. I'm not saying you can't ever run for anything else. But I find that people start to like go a little postal, get a little loony after 3 terms. Or towards the end of their 3rd term. Like I thought Nick was the bee's knees for his first 2 terms. And then towards the end there, he went wacko. I think being 3 terms on the LNC just makes you lose your mind a little bit. So yeah, this passed. I can let you know what the vote total was. Let's look that up. I think it passed pretty healthily. Wrong one. 12-5. And that was pretty much it for this meeting. We went through committee applications for awards and audit. We'll be voting. I go, oh, I'm supposed to do a ballot tonight. Dear Jesus. Okay. Yeah, we're going to be voting on those. For those of you interested, what we'll be voting on is, pull up the OneNote. On the audit committee, 2 non-LNC members will be elected to the audit committee. And I believe, I I think I'm correct. Now I'm like doubting myself that only non-officer LNC members can vote for the audit committee. So I don't think I can vote in that one. And the awards committee, we are electing 2 non-LNC members of the awards committee. So those ballots will be done soon. And coming up for you guys, right now we're soliciting applications for the Information Services Committee. I can tell you I've already got over 150 applications for that. It's crazy. I've never seen so much interest. That's wonderful. We're going to be selecting the Candidate Support Committee, the Ballot Access Committee. Those applications are closed. And next weekend, I'll be sending out applications for the Bylaws Committee. The weekend after that, I'll be sending out applications for the Credentials Committee. The weekend after that, I'll be sending out applications for the Platform Committee. Weekend after that, I'll be sending out applications for the newly created Voting Reform Committee. So that's what's coming up. I'm going to see if anyone has, I'm sticking around for a couple more minutes just to see if anyone has anything in chat, because I want to be sure to be here and be able to rap with you guys about these meetings. I hope you found this helpful. I'm going to try to do this for each LNC meeting, you know, to give my opinion on what happened. But overall, actually, well, I'm not going to play this. I gave also an update on the whole COVID thing, but we didn't do any motions on that, on what I see as the National Party's failure on addressing the civil rights issues. What I had said to them, well, maybe I should play it because some of you might be amused. It's not a motion and it's super quick. And Wandering Nomad, I'll answer your question in one moment. I lost my cursor. Where'd you go? You know, when you have 3 screens, it's easy to lose your cursor.
Able to focus on work, and I specifically made this committee have only call them moment when I
of a nannying effort.
And as the treasurer of the Montana Libertarian Party,
They are that accountable, have that accountability to the LNC.
For audit committee. And while we're waiting for people on that, Ms. Harlos, can we structure the electronic ballot?
And that Dr. Lark has been the past chair of the awards committee.
Well, can I ask a question?
As you're aware,
okay, here we go.
Informational on COVID messaging from Ms. Harlos, 10 minutes.
Okay, one moment here. I just wanted to give you guys a brief update, and I will not take 10 minutes unless there's questions. As you're aware, at a recent meeting, I had asked the LNC to create a certain advisory committee, which was declined, and it was suggested that I do this on my own. There is a group of almost 20 libertarian activists that are going to be meeting on the 8th, and our intent is to come up with suggestions and a potential action plan for the LNC to adopt if it wishes to. So I will be sending that, but the activists themselves will be suggesting things that they can end up doing on their own if the LNC chooses not to. I just wanted to let you know that I did take you guys up on the invitation if I was unhappy to, you know, go roll my own, so to speak.
So what that was about is, you know, the LNC didn't want to head on face the biggest civil rights violations of our time. It was such a minor request I have. I just still kind of butthurt it got declined. So they didn't want to form an advisory committee to try to have, I would say, better messaging, but I don't even think better messaging is the issue right now, to have any freaking messaging. So I think somewhat sarcastically, I was told to just go do it on my own. So you know, want to know what happens when somebody does that to me? I go, okay, challenge accepted. You know, I said, basically, you told me to go roll my own. So I went and rolled my own. Anyone who's interested, I will be posting the Zoom meeting link in the LNC public list for the activist meeting, where we are going to brainstorm ideas. And I already have a couple of my own, but I'm so eager to hear everyone else's on an action plan that the LNC can be doing to live up to our moniker of the party of principle, which we haven't done, as a national party. Some state parties have kicked ass. The state chair of Colorado, I have a lot of criticisms about Colorado, but the state chair has kicked ass on the lockdown issue, and so have many candidates. But the national party has not. And if you would like to help, we're going to formulate an action plan to the LNC, which I have to be honest with you, I fully expect not to be adopted. Then we'll just do it, right? We'll roll our own. I often tell people, what are you waiting for the national party for? Just go do it. You don't need permission. You're libertarians. So if you want to come to that meeting, you can private message me or check the public list. Everyone's welcome, as long as you support the goal and the idea that we failed. Because obviously, if you don't agree, then you're just going to be a distraction at the meeting, because that's the whole purpose of this meeting. So, Wandering Nomad, you receive an application. You should have gotten one in the email. If you email me at secretary@lp.org, I'll send you the link. The only committee we're accepting applications for right now is the Information Services Committee, but the emails will be sent every Sunday. Well, Nima, maybe we'll do a show on that. I would love to debate somebody on that, particularly since I see you have a Mises Caucus thing on there. So maybe you and I should do a debate, because I absolutely disagree with you. But, you know, I like interacting with people. That's why I do these things live, because talking to myself is fucking boring. So, yeah, sorry, Wandering Nomad. I do have ADHD a little bit where I just, oh, look, a bird. So email me, and I can get you the application. And check your email for future ones. If you're not getting national emails, let me know, and I'll make sure we have your right email. Nima, shoot me an email, and we can work it out and maybe lay down some parameters. People seem to enjoy these live discussions. Okay, giving it 2 more minutes to see if anyone has any questions about the LNC meeting or anything else you'd like for us all to discuss. And I do appreciate the suggestion that I can increase the size of my cursor. That didn't even occur to me. I lose my mouse constantly because I do have 3 screens. I'm just going to kind of chat aimlessly here a bit to give you guys a moment if you have any further questions. I use a program called Ecamm. It's Mac only, so haha. Once you go Mac, you never go back. Where I got 3 screens, and it's a really awesome program, but you can get lost in the technology. And I'm a trackball girl, so when I say mouse, I actually have a trackball here, and I keep losing it. And 3 screens aren't enough. I also got 3 screens and an extra laptop. It's freaking crazy. It's crazy, crazy. Cray, cray. Yeah, a Wandering Nomad, I will make sure you your email is updated, because you should be getting national emails. That's how come you didn't know about these applications, and that's really important. Okay, doesn't look like there are any questions. I love you guys hanging out with me. It makes this so enjoyable, even when we disagree. And I'll end with what I said at the beginning. What I've said tonight is my own opinions, not meant to disparage any of my fellow LNC members, even though I do have some sharp disagreements, particularly with ones who claim to be on the same ideological basis as me from the Radical Caucus. But that doesn't mean they're bad people. It just means we disagree. And you might agree with them and disagree with me. Before you make any judgments, I suggest you go talk with them to get their side of it. Yeah, I know how to change it on the Mac, by the way, Nima. I've been a Mac girl for a while. The cursor. So, everyone, thank you for hanging out. Now, I've got to go do some job work and maybe sleep tonight. And if you're a Christian praying type of person, my last EKG, I had a heart abnormality. And tomorrow I am going for the treadmill test, I guess, where they're going to figure out if there's if I'm going defective. I have a feeling that when I did the EKG, I just drank too much caffeine that day, but I don't know. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't a tad bit worried about it, because I'm not the healthiest person in the world. Okay, have a good night, everyone, and I'll talk to you soon. Appreciate it. Bye-bye.